Trees swaying in the summer breeze, showing off their silver leaves as we walked by. Soft kisses on a summer's day, laughing all our cares away, just you and I. Sweet, sleepy warmth of summer nights, gazing at the distant lights in the starry sky. They say that all good things must end someday. Autumn leaves must fall. But don't you know that it hurts me so to say goodbye to you? Wish you didn't have to go. No, 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 no. And when the rain beats against my window pane, I'll think of summer days again and dream of you. They say that all good things must end someday. Autumn leaves must fall. But don't you know that it hurts me so to say goodbye to you? Wish you didn't have to go. No, 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 no. And when the rain beats against my window pane, I'll think of summer days again and dream of you. And dream of you.
What brought me to Madison originally was to go to the University of Wisconsin as a freshman in 1943, one semester, then to the Navy and back to then to Oberlin College, and then back to Madison to finish in 2 more years.
I thought going to school in Madison would be the fulfillment of my life. And so when I was a freshman, it turned out that it was just a joyous experience. I had so much fun. I loved classes. I loved the idea of the freedom. Not that I had been terribly oppressed or anything like that, but it was just doing things my own way.
My father was looking for a job, and my mother was determined that her 3 daughters should go to college. And she said to my father, if you're going to look for a job, go to Madison, Wisconsin. We'll live there, and the girls can go to college. And she turned out to be right. Both my sisters and I graduated from the University of Wisconsin, Madison.
I had a sister and a brother here at the UW at the time. And he said, you know, I'd rather be a big frog in a small pond than a little frog in a big pond. And I thought that over, and I thought, gee whiz, wouldn't it be nice to be a big frog in a big pond?
So when I had a chance to come to the university, there was no question. That was a place to come.
I came down to Madison and graduated in June. In July, they were running at the engineering school, which I had decided to attend, try out.
I was 21 then, and I would have been in my, it was really starting my junior year, but it took me 5 years to finish because I'm slow. And I went to Madison for 3 years and enjoyed them probably a little more than I should have.
I was very naive. I had not had much experience with anyone beyond my family. And I grew up in the country, went to a country school. So I think that I was sort of one of those wide-eyed freshmen coming to Madison and just eating up everything. I loved it all. So it was easy to come to Madison and be a Badger.
I lived in the dormitory and I was 19, and it was an interesting time, and it was in that setting that I re-met Dorothy.
If you want to be a Badger, just come along with me by the bright shining light, by the light of the moon. If you want to be a Badger, just come along with me by the bright shining light of the moon.
Then I met Bob in my senior year. He said that he saved me from spinsterhood, and met Dottie and Bob and Joe and Margo, and we've stayed friends ever since.
Bob Troller and I knew each other as children. When we were at the university, I was at the place, one of the gathering places, and Bob was there. And he stopped and he said, "Aren't you Marge's cousin?" And I said, "Yes." Well, now this had been years since we had seen each other. And so I was there with my roommate. And when we got back to the dorm, my roommate said, "Do you think you could get me a date with him?" And I said, "Well, sure, I'll try. You know, he's a really nice guy." So I was going to get a date with Bob for my roommate, Barb. And I got a phone call, and it was Bob, even before I had a chance to make my move. And Bob said, "How would you like to meet me at the, oh shoot, I can't think of the name. How would you like to meet me at the place and have a malted milk?" Oh, he said, "I'll buy you a malted milk." I thought, big deal. But anyway, he bought me a malted milk. And then he asked me out for a real honest-to-goodness date. And we started dating after that.
Well, I met Joe Melli in law school. I was in my first year, and I had a boyfriend who was very much interested in Republican politics. I saw Joe Melli. He would always come by to report to me how Jack Potter was doing. And I said to him one time, seeing the reason he came to talk to me was because he really wanted to talk to me. I mean, I'm not dumb. And he said I said to him, "You know, what I really like to do is meet some nice Democrat, because I'm a Democrat." You know, this person on the other end of the line said, "Well, I was wondering if you'd be interested in a Democrat, in a date with a Democrat." And I said, "Is this Herbie Page?" He said, "No, this is Joe Melli." So that's how I got to know Joe Melli, because he was kind of aggressive, right?
I got to know Dottie because we both lived in Liz Waters, and we loved Liz Waters and had a great time. And she needed a roommate in the summer of 1949. She had already graduated and had a job with Gas Magazines. And so we rented an apartment on West Washington, which was the world's worst apartment. Dottie's mother came to help us move in, and she cried when she saw the apartment, and the kitchen particularly.
And she said, "I can't believe that you've had 4 years of college and you've wound up in a place like this." So anyway, that was Mary and my experience together. But we had a wonderful time in spite of the cockroaches.
So we knew that she was a person that we wanted to be friends with forever because of her, everything about her.
I met Margo and Joe because Mary, who was courting me and chasing me at the time, knew Margo on campus. They were both student leader types in elected office and all that stuff. And your mother took me and introduced me to Margo, and then Margo introduced me to Joe, and that Joe and I were still being courted by those two women, and we found we were having a good time together.
All of a sudden, there was someone pushing me up the steps on the bus. And I turned around, and it was Bob Williams. And I realized that the bus was totally filled up. People were standing in the aisles, and Bob Williams said to me, "I've done this before." He said, "Put your suitcase down. We'll sit on our suitcases all the way home." And I said, "Okay." And he held out his hand and said, "I'm Bob Williams." And that was it. We became friends right after that.
Margo and Joe were what we used to call then, he was a big man on campus and she was a big woman on campus. And I got to know her because she was a big sister or a mentor to someone coming into mortarboard. Everyone I knew looked up to Margo, and so did I. And Joe he organized the first union of students, all of the student employees in the union at Wisconsin. It was a big deal. So I really thought he was pretty terrific.
Joe and I met at, we were shopping for bargains at McNeil and Moore, and it was around Christmas time. And they were living down on Elizabeth Street, and Joe said, "Well, why don't you come over for New Year's?" And so we did, and we had such a wonderful time talking together. We stayed long after the rest of the people had disappeared, and it's been going on ever since.
So we went to the party, and oh, honestly, when I think about it, I'm so embarrassed. We liked them so much that we stayed, and everyone left the party, and we stayed on. And they were not too horrified. So they invited us again, and we invited them, and so we got to know each other that way.
And I was a couple years ahead of Mary Markham, and so I knew Mary Markham, and eventually through Mary I met Bob Williams, or Joe and I met Bob Williams, and Dottie and Bob Troller.
We called the Margo and Joe and the Trollers, and we rented Great Oak, which you know, the big beach, California beach house, right there where he spent his summers. We rented the beach house together, and as Mary said, it was absolute hell at night. We had 4 playpens on the floor while we had the bedrooms, and kids were in each playpen from a different family. The first year we shared Great Oak. Then we branched off, and we got the Cedars with the log cabin, and when we had that as the 2, the Trollers moved in, and then when all you children started growing too big, we moved across the road to the Brookside Tea Garden Cottage.
We finally got to switch to Cedar Cottage. It opened up some space, and then we got Beach Plum, and we had the 3 cottages along the beach at that point. And then we expanded even more, and your parents took the Brookside Tea Garden Cottage. Such fun with all of our kids and dogs and family, boats, grills.
Well, Great Oak Great Oak did not really live up to its name, but I loved it dearly.
There were 3 cottages that were all in a row. The biggest one was called Great Oak, and it was kind of a modernist affair with a sloped roof and wood floors and spindly furniture on little wire legs, little black iron wire legs, which was, you know, a great source of comedy because little 3-legged stools and 3-legged chairs that somebody was constantly tipping over backwards on.
We thought it was paradise and had so much fun. It was great.
Door County is a charming peninsula that's surrounded by water, as peninsulas are, but with quaint villages, gorgeous harbors, and a multitude of things to do everywhere. There's just relaxation or fun everywhere you turn.
A wonderful beach paradise. Lovely, lovely place to go spend 2 weeks vacation in the summer.
For us, it was a very magical place. This kind of, it's now become a very romanticized summer getaway, but it's where all these families came together and, you know, just enjoyed summer with camaraderie. Like, I guess it's just hard to come by these days. You just don't see this kind of stuff anymore. So it was just kind of an idealistic, or idealized now, summer place that just everything happened. It was all about being on the beach, cooking out every day, you know, people singing and dancing, you know, just having fun all the time. And it was just, to me, just a wonderful way to grow up as a kid.
So once a year we all got together and it was just magnificent. And you got to, you know, and there was water sports, water skiing, sailing, laying on the beach, building sandcastles, raking edelweiss, singing. You know, in the morning of the 4th of July, waking up and having to, you know, raise the flag. There was just endless amount of memories, and they were all fantastic. Like there was never, you know, like, you know how kids nowadays say, "Oh, I'm bored." You were never bored. There was always something to do and somebody to play with and things to do.
Door County set the perfect stage for people that let everything loose, that didn't have to worry about anything. When we got to Door County, all of our problems were left behind.
I think that it meant everything because we would finish Door County. And then they would say, it's about 6 months to Christmas, and then 6 months and we'll be in Door County. So they really, the year passed for them between Christmas and Door County. Do you think so?
I think so. Yeah, it was a very important activity as far as they were concerned, and as far as we were all concerned, really.
Well, I think that, like the elders, the kids have a special relationship, and I think that the fact that the elders do have this relationship is just carried through to the children, and everybody gets along. So, and that's something we're very proud of.
I think it meant a tremendous, from June 1 on, to know you were going to spend 4th of July. This is my thought. That's the place to be. And as you know, there were 11 children between the group of us. And for some reason or another, you meshed. Even Alex meshed with them. And that's tough to Alex to mesh with anybody.
My Door County, and I think all of our Door County is so tied to the time in our lives and the people with whom we vacationed and the traditions, of which it was, I mean, there were many. It was all about the traditions. The feeling that there was an incredible anticipation and a build-up, because my parents spent a lot of energy making sure that they had everything organized, as you do when you have 2 little children. And I remember thinking, wow, we get to go.
But the kids, that was a great part of their growing up, I think.
Oh, they really loved it. They were getting ready long before we had to go.
Oh, we used to spend
And they used to wait around
much of June gathering stuff to get it. We would come up and we had a a van type car, and we'd put the sailboat on the roof, right? Mm-hmm. And then we would tow the motorboat behind, and we would put like bicycles in the motorboat, right?
We had bicycles and chairs.
You'd think we were moving up there for the 6 months.
Some of the pictures that we look at and smile about is the way we packed our little station wagon with all kinds of stuff, including dogs and kids' friends and a boat on top. And
bicycles?
Bicycles. It was kind of a gypsy crew. But it was fun.
Well, I think you're kinder than I was. I said packing up the car was more like the Okies.
Well, the swearing was magnificent.
Well, it was. Well, that's perhaps something that they learned was how to swear.
On Highway 42, you come down a hill next to the park, and you can see the beach and the water, and everybody started to cheer and so on. It was a great event, right?
We're here. There was the coming down the hill, because the way it is, you'd come around the bend, past Thumb Fun, have to go through Fish Creek, Thumb Fun, then past the drive-in, then you do the sweeping bend by the golf course, and then this vista would open out, and you'd see this wonderful view of Ephraim and the bay and kind of where we were and stuff. It was just absolutely, and then it was almost like, a roller coaster ride coming over that. Well, flash forward to having been up there as an adult, it's a slight incline. It's not even a hill. You could skateboard down it, no problem and stuff. But in our minds, it was cresting the horizon for all the endless possibilities of summer at Door County.
So it was the four of them, and we gave them a nickel or a quarter to the first one who would see the sign, Door County.
There was always the sense that you were waking up with somebody else really close by, because all of the cabins had walls that were, about the width of a magazine. So you had this sense that there were tons of other people around. And that was the beginning of the day, that the morning started and you had all these people around, and it was sort of like a party from the moment you opened your eyes.
Right on the water every day and every evening, and we're all away from our routines, and I just think that it was, from the very beginning, it was just magical.
Bob Williams was famous for instigating a party. He was famous for starting everyone going and then not knowing when to say when. They had a wonderful time with their little gin and tonics and their margaritas, and they picked like a different drink every day, and they sat on the beach with their big frilly hats on.
Now, one of my great memories was of Faith Williams and Alex Melli digging big holes in the sand and burying each other.
My boats, actually, we had the sailboat, which was just great. In the harbor, and then we had my motorboat, and we used to really take some very nice trips with that, going down to Egg Harbor and going around.
Bob Troller took me fishing every single summer from the time I think I was 5 on, and I learned to fish with Bob Troller, and we went to lighthouses and we did state parks.
Jumping off the sand dunes. Playing golf with Bob at Peninsula State Park. Yes, he does swear when he golfs. That is true. He most assuredly does do that.
And we always said, if you want to cool off, go across about 7 miles across the peninsula to the Sebastopol beach, where then you could go up into the sand dunes. And we would go down there, the group of us, all 11, and along comes some little John Barleycorn and champagne and a lunch, climb up on the top of the sand dune and watched you people, particularly the guys, run down the way, leap off into space, and literally go 35, 40 feet in the air because they were jumping downhill and whacking and then running off into the cold Lake Michigan. And there we were huddling, but we finished all the champagne before we left.
Sometimes we'd end up going out to the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club. That was the big going out thing. And my buddy John Red and I, we were always the last ones getting ready to go because they had to pull us out of the water because we didn't want to go, and we're playing, you know, till sundown in the water, swimming and doing all sorts of stuff. Well, in this little cabin we had a much smaller water heater. So no matter what, it never failed. There was never a drop of even lukewarm water, anything left. And I don't know where the water came from, like a well from the center of the straight from the North Pole or something, but it was the coldest, shocking, of course. And you had to. We were filthy. We had to take a shower. And it was just that freezing cold water. It just immediately goes, Door County, Door County, Door County cold. So I've got that.
Just lots of good times. Brookside Tea Garden, fresh bread every morning, or every early afternoon, I guess is when we got it. But I really enjoyed hanging out at Brookside and waiting on customers. And for a while, I even cooked a few things and worked in the kitchen, helping to make the bread, and that was lots of fun. So one summer, I even stayed an extra 10 days up there with them and helped out. So
I started to realize there was a weird, I thought it might be something atmospheric about Door County, but there was a weird sound in the air always. There was this high-pitched whining sound that was, and I was like, in retrospect, I'm like, was there something, you know, was it an airplane? Was it stuff like that? Oh no, it was the blender. The blender was going non-stop, not quite 24/7, but sun up to sundown and after sundown. It was daiquiris, margaritas, Mai Tais, probably blended Mai Tais, and my personal favorite, the pina colada. I came back to school one you know, whatever, first week of school, and everybody's talking about what they did over summer, and the nun at Edgewood asked me, you know, what'd you do? And I'm like, oh, I learned how to have a pina colada. And she like looked at me like, what? Of course, I had to explain to her it was a virgin, you know, pina colada, and how ironic her being a nun and everything. But
I can remember Mark. We were really excited about something we were going to do that afternoon, and I can remember Mark holding a hamburger like I'd never seen anybody hold a hamburger. It was like a grip. It was like this backhand grip like this. He was holding it like that, and he had his milkshake, you know, sort of in the other hand, and he had both legs going, you know, and they were just knees going up and down like this as he was eating, and he was taking a bite, and he was humming in a loud voice the William Tell Overture. You know, so you're sitting there eating, you know, it's like both hands like this. And this was the energy that came to so many things that we did when we were kids up in Door County.
So it was more like, you know, us younger kids looked up to the older kids, and we wanted to be them. And all the older kids always looked after us. They didn't mind that we were tagging along with them. You know, they'd go water skiing, and they'd always invite us to go. And you just wanted to be like one of the big kids, and they made us feel that we were part of them. That is just, it's like a great family. They were like all of our brothers and sisters. That's what I really remember most of all. It's just the fact that they never excluded the little kids. It was all of us together, all the time.
And I remember drawing with both Rob and Tom Troller and thinking like, oh my gosh, they're spending time with me. Like, oh, like they were celebrities. And like.
But the highlight of the entire thing, actually the highlight of Door County for me every year was the haunted house. And this haunted house was just insane. This was back in the days, I think before, well, laws, where you'd go in the haunted house and they would grab you. They'd grab the shit out of you. You know, I mean, it was like they'd throttle you around. I mean, it was this bizarre old house up on a hill, serpentining up. You go into it, and then it had like a bookcase you had to go through. And we would go through this thing, and as Door County legend has it, I ran out of it screaming one time through the emergency exit, and I will admit that. I will officially admit I did run out screaming. I was very young, of course. I think I couldn't have been more than 17.
In the Melli's cabin, the chairs were like, had these iron legs that were, you know, that big around. And you, of course, you're walking around in bare feet all the time. And I can just remember slamming your toe into those things and just being like, just screaming in pain. and everybody else in the area would just be like, ha ha ha. It's sort of that absurd thing that humans do where they think it's funny that you got hit, maybe because they know they're going to do it sooner or later. So
making daiquiris with Bob Williams at the Troller's house. Him very carefully explaining to me how to make daiquiris. I think I was about 10, and we were mixing them. And somebody who had apparently had a few daiquiris forgot to put the lid on the blender, turned it on, and went whoosh. And he said, "Whatever you do, don't tell Dottie I did this in her cottage."
But we spent a lot of time playing games and playing cards, and you know, no televisions, no telephones. I remember the parents used to have to go down to Wilson's with loads of quarters to call their offices, and because they'd stand in the one phone booth that was in Ephraim at the time.
Well, I can remember one of the things was that we had these 3 cottages together, and you would, you know, late in the afternoon, somebody would come to enough from having too much to drink or so on, and we would discuss having dinner. And somebody always had some sort of an idea, and then we'd all have dinner together on the beach. It was wonderful. Even with Bob Williams sort of embellishing what we were going to do, we still enjoyed it.
My mother and Dottie and Margo being together on the beach in the evening after it had gotten dark, and they were with their husbands but doing their own thing, and they were chatting, and I would be usually in the log cabin or the log cabin cottage, and I remember hearing their voices, and they would sometimes start to sing, and they would sing either old-time songs or Broadway show tunes, and I remember thinking, wow, this is extremely great for them and for me because they're so happy being with each other. We, you know, eventually we'd be like all tired and kind of sun-soaked, and we'd either get, you know, sweatshirts on or actually shower and, you know, get ready for some kind of night activity if we were going out. But sometimes it was just more like potluck dinners and long, you know, long evenings watching sunset or telling stories, and we'd just stick together till the bitter end of every day. But the whole point of the 2 weeks was that it bookended or encased the 4th of July. The 4th of July was it. And whether it came at the end of the 2 weeks or the beginning or right in the middle, it was either, well, I think it usually was the middle or the end for whatever reason. But it was all about the 4th of July. So at least when you're a little kid.
But remember, I was very interested in something that would, you know, be sort of patriotic. So we started in the morning, and we still do, by raising the flag. And then we pledged allegiance to the flag, and we sang "God Bless America" or something. I don't think we were big on singing the Star Spangled Banner, which was beyond our capabilities.
I like the idea that all kinds of people came, and I loved the fact that it was really patriotic and that people said interesting things about being an American, and that we went to the worst parade in the world. I love the 4th of July. I've never stopped loving the 4th of July.
We had to always go to the parade in Bailey's Harbor, and here we would be sizzling on our beach, and then we would go over to Bailey's Harbor, and the wind would be coming off Lake Michigan, and it would be so cold. We would just be freezing to death. So we finally learned to wear down jackets to the 4th of July celebration in Bailey's Harbor.
We would go over there, you know, and it was supposed to start, let's say, at 10:30. Well, about 11:15 they might have gotten started. So, but we lived through this parade, which we all loved dearly because it was so awful. And I announced one time that what we should really have to honor that parade on the 4th of July was a typical American dinner, you know. So what we did was we had Joe make spaghetti, right? Isn't that a great American dinner? So that's, you know, how the spaghetti dinner little saga started. And we got up early in the morning, and your father had to make, you know, 50 million meatballs, you know. And we started this. That was the very first thing we started doing.
4th of July was always a bit of a blur because usually it started at some obscene hour of the morning, like 6 a.m., and mixing up meatballs and starting sauce and getting things going, and I was always Dad's helper.
As I prepared the onions and garlic and peppers that I used as a base for the sauce, the aroma spread out to the beach. And so people began getting interested at that early stage in the spaghetti, because that aroma attracted them.
Probably my favorite thing about 4th of July is Joe Melli's spaghetti. I mean, I really love it. And now, in the last few years, I've done a certain amount of preparation of 4th of July spaghetti with him, so I know how to make the meatballs. I do.
Over in Great Oak, where you had no facility, you had this little stove, remember?
That little stove.
And every time if it was a windy day, you opened the door and the wind came in and the stove went out. Oh.
And that cottage can get so hot.
Oh, just unbearable. Yeah.
Then I would go out and take a swim after I worked for a while, cool off, come back in, get back to work again.
Yeah.
At one point in 1967, remember the Trollers and
that's right, and the Q-Tells.
Yeah, Q-Tells.
Yeah.
Bought us pots and pans
to do our spaghetti. The spaghetti
and we
dinner.
still have
and we still have them. They're engraved. And it says 1970.
There's an American flag, 4th of July, and then
their
engraved
names.
names of the donors.
Yeah.
So they really have an interest.
It's a real tradition, I think, right?
So we would come back from the parade, and then we would get ready for the big, huge, wonderful meal, and then it was showtime.
Susan Troller and Jennifer Williams thought that there ought to be something more to this, and they wanted to give little presentations. So I don't remember, I'm too old now, I don't remember what it was that Jennifer read, but it was something very, very patriotic and very nice. And then both she and Susan, sort of added this element, which was a wonderful thing.
Susan Troller and Jennifer Williams at about 12, and they were martinets. They wanted to direct everything their way and only their way. Write script, produce something, and use the other 9 kids as tools. So we'd have usually a cast of 15 youthful people putting on a skit on the night of 4th of July. And the skits would be out in front of the Melli cottage, weather permitting, and if it was a bad night on 4th, they'd go across the street to the Brookside Tea Garden. That was probably the most continuing thing I remember from Door County.
What I remember is that Jennifer and I had our hands totally full because it was like herding cats. I mean, it was unbelievably difficult because no one wanted to cooperate. And the parents were very interested in seeing an amusing show. And of course, Jennifer and I were fairly dramatic and fairly bossy. And we wanted to have the children have a decent show instead of just kind of kicking each other in the butt, you know, and falling down. That was that was considered extremely hilarious. And, you know, that would have been the whole show, is just the boys kicking each other in the butts, falling down, and then hopping up and saying something. We wanted there to be political gravity. We wanted there to be a certain amount of musical talent. We wanted it to be artful. And, you know, when you're dealing with this horde of really dreadful little children and you're trying to make a show, it's not easy. So it was, I remember it as being rather stressful.
We didn't quite know what to do with the little kids, so we probably came up with ideas, I'm sure we did, as to how to incorporate them, because we needed more staff. And so we, you know, wrote little skits for them.
So they were writers, producers, directors, they were everything. But Susan Troller and Jennifer Williams would never have won the Best Loved Award from the rest of the kids. That was my feeling.
We had no power, just, you know, the power of being the oldest sisters who tried to control everyone very ineffectually.
We have big ideas, and we like to sort of steer people in the directions that we think they should go, and everyone was younger than us, so we had, you know, we had these big ideas.
It was interesting the way the older kids would get the younger kids in on it, and I think some of the younger kids weren't too happy with all the bossing around that was going on, but they managed to get it all together.
Rob Troller thought up, in which you had somebody put a you know, we put a quilt, a blanket over the head of somebody, and then Rob would have had some sort of song and dance thing, and he would look in at the person and have something smart to say. And usually, as I recall, the person underneath the blanket was supposed to collapse when Rob Troller looked at her. Well, the climax of all this was he got Joby Melli underneath this blanket. When he lifted it up, Rob Troller collapsed instead of Joby. One of my favorite memories of Rob Troller.
Actually, I said earlier that Bob Williams didn't have a great, he had a very quiet laugh. At these performances, he didn't. He didn't. He had a loud, hooting laugh that would start high and then would come down and start talking towards the end of it. It would be like, did you see what those kids did?
We had music. Alex one year played the violin and did a very nice job.
Everybody planned something.
And Sarah danced at one point with her ballet.
Of course, there was the fabled play every year, which was, you know, wonderful, especially the year that my brother Alex did Rockin' Robin. That was a true classic in my mind. It really was.
But I do remember one of the earliest shows we put on, doing a lip syncing to Michael Jackson's Rockin' Robin. And no, I'm not going to do it.
I was one of the backup singers in that. That was one of our earlier plays. We got much more involved as time went on. And of course, it got to be a really big project, you know, where we'd have to spend 4 and 5 days rehearsing things. And
I do remember that Rob and Tom, they would always do Groucho Marx things. And I, as a little girl, didn't really know about Groucho Marx, but I tell you what, the adults used to laugh their heads off at them. I never really understood it.
Eventually, the older kids, I was basically the youngest of the entire group and stuff, and the older kids had started this tradition of doing a play or the show. You know, it was always doing the show. And it went through different iterations, you know, and it sounds like at the beginning, which I don't remember because I wasn't born. In the beginning, there was a lot more singing and a lot more like putting on of production numbers type things. But then when we got to Rob and Tom Troller and my brother, when that whole generation was kind of becoming the older crowd, it became skits and sketch comedy. And it was really funny. I mean, looking back on it, I thought that Rob and Tom Troller were geniuses. They were comic geniuses. My brother, and they're putting all these things together. And I'd be lucky if I got to be in one of their skits that they were doing. And it was only years later where I discovered they were a bunch of frauds. They were doing Marx Brothers routine.
I think the Marx Brothers one would have been funnier had we been able to actually remember our lines and pull it off, but it was kind of sketchy. But I think everybody got the idea.
When the young men got involved, they got a little bit rowdier.
When we first arrived in Door County for our vacations, we would start preparing the show, and it was different every year, and there was sort of somebody different in charge of it every year. For instance, I think Jennifer and Sue Troller, the oldest of the Generation 2, were really in charge of it for the older kids. But by the time Alex and I were show ready, or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years old, Tom and Mark, Tom Troller and Mark Williams were kind of in charge. I remember Sarah definitely having big ideas. Oh, and Rob, who wasn't really that much older than we were, and 5 years older, but he was kind of a natural leader. So it's like there had to be somebody that was sort of in charge and sort of organizing this thing.
They would write things and sing little songs and make up new words for familiar melodies and things like that. So.
And it was the years when the alewife fish had swum up the St. Lawrence Seaway, the saltwater fish, and by the time they got to the Great Lakes, of course, they died in the millions and wound up on our beaches. And so we spent a lot of summers digging holes to bury alewives. And Susan and Jennifer came up with this relyricizing of Edelweiss to alewives.
Alewives will always stick out of my mind as my favorite episode, and that was quite a year. So, quite a year.
Alewives, alewives, every morning they greet me.
Small and bright, clean and white.
You seem ready to meet me. Fishes of gray, won't you go away? Go away from Lake Michigan. Alewives, alewives, I hope I never see fish again.
Perfect. All right, good. Nice job.
Well done.
4th of July fireworks on Eagle Harbor. That was probably one of my top memories. All these different generations gathered on the beach, and all the voices going, ooh, ah, and the fireworks playing out over Eagle Harbor.
And that lasted probably from maybe 64 or 65 on until 1982.
82 or 83, yeah.
1982.
Yeah. 23
and we still
years.
do it once in a while up in Door County.
Yeah,
but
but
it isn't.
it isn't the same.
It's continuous, right?
The 4th of July was a big event up in Door County. It never will be the same. No. I think my children all remember that. Right, Alex?
But we really spent a lot of time watching the days progress, enjoying the water, enjoying swimming, wonderful swimming there, because it was shallow, and then you could get out and on beautiful days. It was great. And then we often ended up deciding what we were going to eat and then having a communal dinner together in the evening. And so the sunsets went into the dinner hour, and then most of us would be so tired we went to bed with our children.
Well, a tradition we should forget is Joe Melli would have a 40-foot a cord, extension cord. He'd plug in the daiquiri maker out here on the beach. The cord would be in the cottage, plugged into the wall, and we'd start at noon with daiquiris, and we would go well into the afternoon. And Margo Melli had a little Walgreen rubber raft, and Bob and Bill Ellis had one, and there they were out there getting plastered, floating on that calm, calm water. And people would say, you need another, yeah, we need another one out here. Margo, who, you know, the perfect lawyer, the perfect law professor, no, imperfect tourist, not on vacation.
You and Bob Troller decided that the way to handle the fact that both of you had lots of telephone calls was you put a telephone in the little cottage in between us, Beach Plum, right?
Right. The Trollers were in Cedar Cottage.
And we were in Great Oak.
Beach Plum was between Cedar Cottage and Great Oak, the one that we
And
were.
you guys decided to rent that cottage because it wasn't that expensive. Put a telephone in it, right? Remember?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and then Lee Dreyfus decided that he liked that area, and he was going, I remember, he said to me one time, I'm going to run for governor. And I thought to myself, why would he want to do that? But he did. Anyhow, he and Joyce came up and rented Beach Plum, the little bitty cottage. But Joe and Bob continued to pay for the telephone in there, right?
Right. So it was still our telephone.
Telephone. So there was the number was listed there under Bob Troller and Joe Melli. So people would call for Joe and Bob. And Lee Dreyfus would answer the telephone, and he would say, "Yeah, wait, no, but he answered."
Phone call, Joe.
But when people would call, he'd answer the telephone and say, "This was the governor of Wisconsin."
Well, that was later when
he was
became
elected.
Governor, that was the little White House.
Yeah. Well, but one time he said to me, "You know, Margo, this isn't the smallest cottage in the world; it's the largest telephone booth."
We had a wonderful meal one night.
We had a lot of wonderful.
We had a lot of wonderful meals. We did.
When he wasn't drinking, he was good.
And when I was drinking, I was effusive. So I wanted to go and compliment the chef. And Mary was as enthusiastic as I was. And so the two of us went back to the kitchen and said we wanted to compliment the chef. And he said, "And what did you have?" We could not remember what we had. So how could we compliment it? But we said it, we sort of fumbled through and said, well, you know, it was just very good. But we can't remember what we had.
Yeah, I think one thing that shows how it was lasting was that as time was running out and all the kids were growing up and some getting married, and that the Trollers and the Mellis decided that they were going to build their big white wooden palace on the lake over at Bailey's Harbor, up the beach at the Bailey's Harbor Beach. And they built it thanks to Tom Troller, their son, a Boston architect, who came back and designed this house for them, which is a great white wooden palace. They built it so they could return to Door County as they wanted to and live there.
We decided that we should really go over and spend some money to keep the restaurant going. So Mary and Bob and Dot and Bob and Joe and I went over for dinner. It was that the night that Bob Williams got in somebody's car and to take a little nap, but he got in the wrong car, which caused a certain amount of commotion.
It's from that wonderful movie, Same Time Next Year. We would be up there and enjoying it, never talking of at home and what was going on at home or wasn't, but we turned to each other as we got in the cars and loaded them up and top of the station wagon, and we look at each other and we'd say, same time next year, and everybody'd go back and cross off their calendars for the next year to be out of town. We never left for more than a day, and we'd range our calendars, and then I'd lie to a client, and they'd say, well, how about the 2 days after the 4th, July 6th? And I'd say, oh, not a chance. My mother will be so ill then we'll have to be home with her. Lied like hell.
There was a lot of growing up that we all did, and that summer, those summers in Ephraim were really a touchstone of development for all of us. That it was something that was a constant, but it was separated by a lot of other events. So each year as we came back, I think we were aware of the changes that we had all gone through in the time. So we were, in some ways, I think, aware of our own growth as individuals and as families.
It was this unconditional belonging, this love and respect and a place to be, the place to be, this exclusive invitation, sort of, that we all had every year. And it was, for those 2 weeks every year, it was an unconditional thing. They were the best people to be around.
I think that what taught us about Door County was that we were making memories.
I think our children like the idea that there are traditions that go back many, many years. It's meaningful to them because it is something that's part of the family. So they feel like they have an extended family, even though it's not really family. But it is somewhat tribal for them, even though it's not their personal experience.
Like we were all just in it together, and it was right. It was just right.
There were many of those kinds of episodes where we were, not only were we given a bunch of freedom, we were constantly testing the limits of it. And we were, I think, given an amount of latitude that probably helped us grow. And I think the communication always stayed open, despite the fact that there were disapprovals and there were, a few little harumphs and things like that. The communication usually stayed open, and I don't remember anybody crossing their arms on their chest and sort of turning their back to each other.
And they really loved kids, and they thought, they gave us a platform and a microphone, and they listened to us, and they would, my dad used to say every morning on vacation, what are you going to do today? What are you going to do today? And we always say, we're on vacation, Dad. We're on vacation, Dad. And then it turned out that Sarah Melli used to say, well, Sarah, what are we going to do today? So I just can't say enough that it was a lesson in learning about longevity and endurance and generations, and it was fun, but it had a deeper meaning to it.
Given the opportunity, you teleport yourself into that sort of carefree mentality at a moment's notice. The no real schedule, just sort of bopping around, the freedom. I mean, we were at the age, of course, where the parents were very fortunate that they could sort of turn us loose. They could kind of do their thing and pretty much trust that we weren't going to get into too much trouble. And obviously now, being a parent myself, I know they had one eye on us. It didn't feel like they did, but they did. But just, it's something that I hope that I can provide. It'll never be, nothing's ever quite the same, but if I can provide something for my kids to latch onto at some point, I certainly hope I'm capable of doing that, because it's just tremendous, and it's something you wish everybody could have a piece of something like that in their lives.
But I think the thing that was really terrific was the degree of freedom that we were given. That the parents would read or be on the beach or go run various errands or something like that. And as kids, we had pretty much free reign. And of course, as we became adolescents, that was, just thoroughly undeserved. We had shown ourselves to have no level of responsibility that we deserved that degree of freedom. but we were given it nonetheless.
Also being very free, because in that time, we sort of lived together as a group, and you never really knew where you were going to sleep or eat, but it didn't matter. And that was really fun. And that's my memory of the adults, that they became sort of this unit of 6 doing things together, and the kids became a unit of the children, and we did things together, and we just sort of interacted from time to time. You know, adults, kids, we'd go off and do things. Jennifer and I would ride our bikes up to the Red Barns, and we could be gone for really almost indefinitely. And, you know, I'm not sure anyone really noticed where we were or what we were doing. And that's a very freeing thing as a child.
But it all turned out that we learned the value of friendship, and we learned the value of tenacity and longevity, and that people really don't last forever, but memories do.
Memories of Door County are so remarkable, especially as a parent now. When I think about taking an unruly bunch of kids to Door County, it's pretty daunting. And the fact that our parents did it over and over and over again must mean that they had a pretty special relationship. Either that or we had them completely duped, which is also entirely possible.
I felt like we were kind of a tribe. And I liked the feeling that for the time we were in Door County, we had extra parents. And that you really didn't know who was going to make your lunch or your breakfast. But it would be any of the mothers. The fathers did not make breakfast. They didn't make lunch. Joe Melli made 4th of July spaghetti. But that was kind of it. I think the moms were pretty responsible for making it all work. But it was fun having extra mothers and extra fathers.
They were very self-deprecating. They had broad senses of humor. They didn't take themselves too seriously, although they were all very accomplished people, still are. And I think about what has made them such unique people is their mutual respect, certainly the longevity of their relationships. I mean, their individual marriages and their length of just their duration, I guess, the continuity. And a lot can happen in 60, 70, 80 years.
We had a legacy, and we knew that we were actually living out our legacy each day. Even the kids did. Every time we did something, Sarah Melli would always say, "Well, remember this, Sarah."
And that's when we said, this is going to last. If we can get through this, it'll last forever. And it has. This is forever.
And so it has been a wonderful gathering of 6 very different personalities with very different interests who saw in each other something remarkable. And they have continued to see it for 60 years. And I think that's really wonderful. I think there's something really terrific in that.
But it's that time when, at the end of the day, it's still warm, and the water has such a very, very beautiful tinge. I mean, an unusual tinge of green with the blue, and the sky is gorgeous with the sunset. That's quintessential Door County.
And all the kids really enjoyed this. And so did we all. We you know, our cottage, Great Oak, was okay up until about 10 a.m. And then it got so hot you couldn't stay inside. So you spent your time out on the beach, which was a very nice beach. it began to cool down around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was when somebody thought we ought to figure out what to have to eat, and we did, and we ate on the beach. It was a wonderful, wonderful vacation. Lots of wonderful memories.
I have told this story to many of our friends in other places, including in Kohler, when we were all very young. And then as it grows through the years, I find that nobody has this kind of an existence of 3 families, 11 children, starting out as we did, and going without them, and having the children, and going through all the stages of our own lives, and yet reforming as we are tonight, or as we were in Door County for 20-some years. I don't find that, and they're all look at me and say, I don't know how it could have happened. I don't know. We have never experienced anything like that. The closest of the 3 families, and not the closest, because you do your own thing and then you can reconvene. We kind of pick up, don't we, Joe?
Oh, yes.
And the thing is, we remember things we shouldn't remember, and we forget things we shouldn't forget.
The thing that strikes me that has always held them together is that they have a very strong mutual respect, despite the fact that they all have very divergent views. And that they are not the same kind of people at all. You know, they're all very different from each other. So they have a great deal of respect. They have, I think, all an inherent civility, not just to each other, but also to other people, and expansive senses of humor.
See, they're even better than family when you come right down to it, because some way, somehow, the warts don't show.
Yeah, good one, Joe. Good. He's a lawyer. How can he get analogies like that? He's writing good copy. I got to get out of here.
Sure. And we want to continue. I look forward to getting together with this group very much, and I would hope that this will continue on for as long as I'm around.
People that asked about the kids and what we did, and I gave up because people kept saying to me, no, it can't be. You can't have 11 children and 6 adults with all the adults guests and all the things. You can't continue that for 20 years and doing it and having everybody happily go up there. My memory is it was a thing unto its own, and I don't know anybody in our friends, all of which somewhat admire it but shake their heads and said, no, you can't have done that with that group, and we did it. I just remember it as a happening that I'm glad to have been a part of and remember.
The memory that I have is the late afternoon sun setting. It had such a quality. And I love that. And we usually ate on the beach. So the sun was setting, and we had the grill going, and probably someone mixing a drink. And you kids probably had been sent over to the hamburger place or had gotten pizzas, but it was the adults, and things were kind of settling down, but it was that light at that time of day that I love. I like to think about it.
Bye.